we're going to show you a little tip on doing a hidden tang. So this one happens to be on a sword that I'm making. I got all my fittings here ready to go. I got everything spaced where it needs to be. I got the handle carved out, and I got all my tang holes drilled. And I slide on just like this. So this handle is actually fitting pretty tight, especially when I put the fuki on. They're a really nice lockup. But yeah, there is some wiggle in it. So you know, I'm not very good at carving, and I'm not exactly sure what wood I'm supposed to be using, but it does have a little bit of wiggle in it. So I'm sure there's voids and areas of the tang that aren't touching the carving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and more or less kind of glass bed this, but I'm not going to use fiberglass. I'm going to use epoxy. So I'm going to go ahead and get this seated on, get a nice tight fit. And the idea is before the epoxy dries all the way, I'm going to pull the handle off, and then I'm going to let it continue to dry off of the tang. So I have put grease on the tang as a release agent. You can actually buy release agents for this stuff, kind of work, but it's really expensive and it's a waste of money. I've had really good use just using Vaseline, wheel bearing grease, any kind of grease that's thick to prevent the epoxy from sticking to the metal will work just fine. So let's go ahead and mix up some epoxy and show you how we do this. Alright, so I've also done this technique using a router. And pretty much what you do is you just router, with a router tool of course, a plank of wood, and you're just going to router the thickness of the tang in one plank, and then you take the other plank and you sandwich it, and then you epoxy it and let it dry and everything. And then after that's all dried up, then you just use the epoxy to make the shape of the tang. So when it's just about dry, you slide it off, and when it dries all the way, the epoxy takes that square, that rectangle that you routed in, and it'll actually put the shape of the blade in there. That's a pretty good technique too. But I need to stop gabbing and get to mixing, because this is a 5-minute epoxy. And I really don't have a lot of time to fool around here. I mean, it's a cool morning, so it should give me pretty much the 5 minutes I need. On hotter days, it can start to set up on you before you're finished, so adjust accordingly on your hardener. Yeah, but the router trick's actually a really fast way to do a hidden tang handle, and then you just kind of bed it in with some epoxy, and yeah, it actually does a pretty good job. But this one here I carved out as closest to dimensions of the tang on each side of the handle scale here, our handle. So that's just the way I did this one. Now we're going to scoop this stuff in here. We're going to get as much of it in there as we can. Most of it's going to squeeze out anyways, because like I said, this handle is pretty tight. I don't know if you can see this. So we're just going to go ahead and scoop as much of this epoxy into the hole as we can, and see if we can get some of it pushed down in there. Well, it helps if you put the handle on the right direction, so make sure you put the handle in on the right direction. Scoop, 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 scoop. Alright. Got all that I'm going to get out of there. Alright, so start to push it on here. I don't know if I got epoxy in my hand or not. Handle this long, I don't know if it's going to go all the way down in there, but you know it's enough when you kind of get it squeezing out of the front, so you pretty much know you've got all the voids filled in at that point. Alright, so that's got a nice squeeze out at the front. I greased all this up too, so none of that epoxy sticks. And I can actually see it back here in the tang holes too, so I'm going to clean that out. I don't have the flicky on here, so it might not be exactly in the right spot. I think that fluky takes up about a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, there we go. Alright, so let's let this set up. And then before it is dry, we'll rip that handle off, so hold on. Alright, so it's probably been about, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and the epoxy is still sticky, but it's not moving anymore. It's just kind of like a stiff gel. And it feels about the same on here too. It just doesn't, it's not dripping and flowing anymore. It's kind of congealed, but it's still soft. So now we're going to go ahead and slide this off. Still feels kind of wet on the inside, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes. Alright, let's give it a pull, see what happens. Well, looks like it came off okay, but it just doesn't seem like it's drying on the inside. Of course not, 'cause I'm videoing, making a video. Guess the epoxy is just not drying. Just fine. I mean, I can leave it off. All right, so I'll give you a close up here. I don't know if you can kind of see it or not, but no, you're not gonna be able to see it. But if you look down in there, there is a thin layer of epoxy. A thin layer of epoxy on the whole inside of this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some acetone and clean all this up. And I'll let this dry. I'll just let that dry when it's off, and we'll do a final fit up when everything's dried up the rest of the way. But yeah, it just didn't seem like it was drying all the way on the inside, but I think everything's fine. Everything works, so it'll be a nice tight fit. All right, everything finally dried up enough, I guess. It's still sticky. I don't know what the deal is with that epoxy today. It looks like it's 50-50 when I mixed it. So I'm just working it on and off right now. Trying not to be too rough with it. But yeah, it's a pretty tight fit. Next I'll get the Fuki on it and see if it still fits. I gotta clean all this epoxy off of it first. Alright, I got the Fuki back on it and see what we can do. These parts will wear together. Yeah, so there we go. I do have a gap right here now. I hope that's not because of this moving. By hand. So like I said, the more I take this arm off, the more I'll be able to assemble it without having to use a hammer. Yeah, so that puppy is tight. So we'll take a close up here and show you where we're at. So I got the holes lined up. But right here you can kind of see a gap. So we might have to do some fiddling with the geometry somewhere. I'll probably have to change the angle of the habaki. Just by a very little bit. And then I'll have to add another spacer, probably a fiber spacer. It's not going to be enough gap there for it to be like a metal shim or anything. It'll probably wind up being a fiber spacer, probably construction paper. Or, I don't know, we'll see how all that goes. But yeah, I can definitely see that the angle is kind of off. So that's why we do all this fit up before we go any further. So let me get this set, and then we're going to move on to finishing this handle. But yeah, I really just wanted to show the bedding of the handle and see if I can take it apart. but eventually I will be able to. Alright, so the epoxy's dried, and I've been working with it for a little bit here. Just kind of working it on and off, and just trying to get it to seat correctly. Plus I've been messing around with these spacers, trying to get everything to come in together and lock up tight. But that's something for a different video. Right now we're just worried about the glass bedding on, or the epoxy bedding of this handle. So got it on there pretty tight. There's no wiggle at all. It's nice and tight. There was a slight wiggle before I did do this. It was still pretty good, but still a slight wiggle. And right now I got it on with just a couple fist bumps, and pin goes through. Of course, this is a straight pin. When it's all said and done, it'll have a taper pin in it, so that'll help draw it in. You don't have to sit there and beat on it. And the removal's pretty good. So yeah, whenever you want to do a hidden tang knife, you just want to use a router and hog it out, then treat that with some sort of release agent, a grease of some sort, and just fill the whole tang full of epoxy and just pop it off right before it dries and just let it set. It's a pretty good technique, and but just know that it will be tight and it will be kind of sticky, so you have to work with it for a while. I was actually fighting this one a little bit, and I went ahead and greased it up. So got a little bit of grease on it, and now I'm working it on and off pretty good. So far we got a pretty nice lockup, a pretty tight fit, and may still need to do a fiber washer when it's all said and done. We'll see. But I'm gonna get to shaping this handle and shut this video down. I just want to share that tip with you guys. I don't know if it'd be helpful for anybody, but yep, share the tip with you. I might as well show you where we're at with it anyways, even though it's not the focus of the build. So I've been working on just this section right here all week, just right here between my fingers. So, and all this was pretty much to be able to drill these two holes. So and but it's coming in. Got the Habaki, it's a SEPA, a couple of spacers, and then we got the Fuki, and now this is the Suba, of course. Yeah, check this Suba out. This was the iron that we forge welded a few videos ago, and I think it came out with a pretty good texture. I went ahead and put this in ferric chloride for a day and a half, and it really etched into that iron. You can kind of see it on the edges too, where it went in between the layers. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty cool. And then the grain actually went 180 degrees the other way, because the way I stacked it, I guess all the grain wasn't going the right direction. So, but I thought that was pretty cool. But I just figured I'd show that off a little bit. But I just wanted to show you guys a tip on these handles. And like I said, it sword this big, it is a little bit more difficult for a handle this big, but it's a really simple process with smaller handles. So, you know, if you don't have any carving tools and you don't want to sit there trying to get it as close as you can with whatever you might have to go buy, yeah, just I don't know if you have a router or whatever, just use a router, and you can even do a drill through with this. You know, if you had like on a knife, if you had like a square tang or something like that, you could just drill a hole and then just seat the square tang with epoxy too. So, all right, I'm gonna shut up and let you go, and yeah, we'll see you on the next one.